When we were infants, we would eat when we were hungry and quit when we were full. Unless we had a mom that was bottle feeding us and said, no, the chart says 8 ounces, so you're going to eat 8 ounces whether you want it or not. And then we get burped and we put it all over the place, you know. So if we were breastfed, mom had the trust, and she quit when we were full, and we quit when we were full. So it's just been a real interesting process of us just resetting. You may already do mindful eating, and this will just be kind of a review for you. Maybe there's times that you do mindful eating, sometimes that you don't. So I got this little PowerPoint to share with you, but I found that if I do the mindful eating experience with you first, then we do the PowerPoint and review it, people have told me it's a lot more meaningful. So Brian, can I be in the back while they do the mindful eating experience? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. So you all have your treat, your napkin, and your handout. Also, we just need a little more napkin. Yes. The purpose is to learn or to remember to eat in a controlled, deliberate, and positive fashion. For human beings, eating is one of life's greatest pleasures. We've got, other pleasures that we enjoy too, but eating is one of life's greatest pleasures. And so when we learn to do this in a controlled, deliberate, and positive fashion, it makes it completely pleasurable, and then we're in charge. So we're going to go through a couple of steps, well, more than a couple of steps, but various steps to just let you almost overemphasize mindful eating. And I like to do this from the back of the room so that you don't look at me, so you don't feel ridiculous. And between each step, what we're going to do is, number one, a thing called centering breath. And if you've taken yoga before or have done meditation, you know what a centering breath is. It can be a cleansing breath or a centering breath. Kind of hard to do with our masks on. But basically, it's in through your nose to a count of 5, out through your mouth to a count of 5. If you've done yoga or meditation, you know that sometimes when you overemphasize the inhalation and the exhalation, you get a lot more of that deep breathing experience. So let's all practice that once. So I'm going to say, I will tell you to inhale, and I'll count to 5 slowly, and then I'll say exhale, and I'll count down from 5. So let's just try one with your mask on. Okay, ready? Get in a comfortable position. Okay, let's go ahead and inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hopefully when you did that, you felt your shoulders soften a little bit, your neck soften a little bit, and maybe even your jaw soften up a little bit. So let's try it one more time, and this time really focus on letting everything just kind of relax and kind of drop. So let's inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, good. So between each step, I'll invite you to take your centering breath. And then point number 2 talks about a focal point. Now, some folks prefer to close their eyes when they do this, and I'm one of those people because I get so easily distracted. But other folks prefer to find a focal point, so it could be, a spot up on the slide if you want, or whatever you want. So it's your choice. So each time we take a bite of our food, I want you to either choose to focal point something or to go ahead and close your eyes, whichever works best for you. And what I'll do is I'll tell you what we're going to do with our bite, and then before you take your bite, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and do our centering breath together, and then you'll go ahead and take the bite. So I'll direct you. Not trying to be a control freak, but it just works a little bit better if I just kind of remind you the steps. So go ahead and open up your bag of chips. Everybody got them open okay? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take our centering breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to experience the food without tasting it. So go ahead and look at it, smell it, touch it. Listen to it, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but you could, snap a chip in half if you want to. So just take a few seconds just to do that. And as you do it, assess what's going on in your mouth, your throat, your stomach, and any other physical or emotional responses. It's getting close to lunchtime, so are you experiencing salivation in your mouth? Where your mouth is naturally secreting saliva, which is actually the first step in digestion to moisten the food and to start breaking down the starch? Are you getting kind of tense because you're just looking and anticipating crunching that chip just from the smell and the sight of it? And how do you feel about that? And no matter how you feel, it's okay. It's all physiologic. Some folks will have their stomach growling and they get embarrassed. It's like, no, that's good. That just means that your body's getting ready to eat. That's all right. Okay, so we will do step number 5, but kind of pay attention to what we'll do this time. What you'll do when I tell you is you'll take your first bite of the food, and I just want you to be aware of what your response is. Just what are you aware of? So let's go ahead and do our centering breath. Okay, good. Close your eyes or find your focal point, and go ahead and take your first bite. Be aware. What's going on? What are you feeling? Be very aware of what's going on. And as we go through the process, we'll kind of dissect the whole thing. So before we do number 6, what you just did was you took a baseline bite. Of course, we did the centering breath ahead of time and some other things that you normally wouldn't do. But for our next step, what I want you to really focus on is after we do our centering breath and after you take a bite, I want you to notice the path of the food in your mouth. Where does it go? Just be very, very aware of where the food naturally goes in your mouth. So let's go ahead and do our centering breath. Go ahead and take your bite. And just track. Be very aware of what's going on. Are you a left-sided chewer? Are you a right-sided chewer? Do you go back and forth? Once your potato chip gets, chewed up, it gets soggy, and gets moved to the back of your mouth, then close to your throat, the process of peristalsis takes place. And peristalsis is the natural ability of your esophagus to just take the food and just cause it to be moving down towards your stomach. It's quite amazing, and we all take it for granted. So just think, were you right-sided? Were you left-sided? I'm a right-sided chewer, and never much paid attention to it until I did the mindful eating experience. And there's nothing wrong with being a sighted chewer. It's just that if eating is one of life's greatest pleasures and you really want to get the value of that food, you really want to hold it in your mouth a little bit longer. You maybe want to try to consciously chew on both sides so that the food as it's chewed gets spread over your tongue so all the taste buds get engaged with it. So that's what our next step is going to be. What we'll do for number 8 is this time we'll try to control the path of the food in our mouth. If you're a right-sided chewer, could you maybe go back and forth between right and left? And if you're a left-sided chewer, the opposite. Could you hold that food in your mouth a little bit longer to get the real value of the taste? So often when we eat some of our favorite binge foods, we eat them real quickly because we enjoy them so much, and then it's like, yikes, I just ate that whole giant bag of chips, so if I would have slowed down and enjoyed it. So this time after you do your centering breath, I want you to really focus on controlling the path of the food in your mouth. So let's go ahead and take our centering breath. Okay, go ahead, take your bite. Try to hold it in your mouth and go back and forth. Realize that once it gets to the back of your mouth, goes down your throat, it's gone. The pleasure is gone from that food. Try to get as much value out of that food as you possibly can. Okay, and before we do number 9, I want to just go through the whole taste bud thing with you. Back in the old days, we used to think that our 4 different taste buds were kind of mapped in a certain spot on our tongue. Sweet would be at the tip of our tongue. Salty would be at the front on either side. Sour would be on either side in the back of our tongue. And bitter would be way in the back of our tongue, which is kind of interesting in the middle, because we really wouldn't taste bitter too long before we'd swallow it. Well, more recent research shows that for most of us, our taste buds are spread all over our tongue, all intermingled. And then there's a 5th taste, and that's called umami, and that's kind of like savory. The savory, it was the Asians that named that 5th taste, which is pretty cool. That now it's pretty much determined that we have 5 different tastes, and they're all intermingled. So you guys have potato chips. So potato chips have salty, and if you would hold it in your mouth long enough, your starch enzyme called thallium in your saliva would actually start to break down that starch, and you would start to taste a little sweet, which is really, really weird. You probably never thought of that. Maybe when you were in 4th grade talking about digestion, your teacher passed out a saltine to everybody and said chew it up and hold it in your mouth, and then eventually you could taste that it was starting to turn the starch into simple sugar. And that's the same thing with potato chip. So this time I'm going to invite you to, this is going to be kind of hard with potato chip, but try to hold it in your mouth as long as you can and see if you can notice that sweet flavor. People that do Hershey Kisses, that's generally like the bitter and the sweet. And most of us don't even taste the bitter because we gulp it so fast that we didn't even have it in touch with our bitter taste buds. So I get them to hold the Hershey Kiss in their mouth and let the whole thing melt, which a lot of them aren't used to doing. And so I invite you to try that this time and see if you can't get the sensation from salty to sweet. So go ahead and take your centering breath. Okay, go ahead and take your bite. And this time try to get as much flavor out of that potato chip as you can. See if you can actually notice the difference between the sweet into the salty. Okay, now we're going to go to step number 10. And this time we're going to discuss or have you noticed the texture. Foods that have multiple textures are really pleasurable to human beings. When I would do this one-on-one with people, I would have them bring in their favorite comfort food or their favorite binge food. And so often it was like a Reese cup or a peanut M&M or something that had multiple textures, or potato chips that have multiple textures. So what I'm going to invite you to do this time is, after a centering breath, just really focus on the texture. Can you like suck on the potato chip until it turns into kind of a mush? Or do you really like the crunch and want to crunch it into like a potato paste and let that sit on your tongue for a while? You decide what's most pleasurable for you. So go ahead and do your centering breath. Okay, good. Go ahead and take your texture bite. Okay, let's just review what we've done so far. We talked about mindful or focused eating, and the purpose of it is to learn to eat in a controlled, deliberate, and positive fashion. We talked about our centering breath, just kind of centering us to let this be a pleasurable, enjoyable, stress-free experience. We talked about a focal point or closing our eyes. We told you to experience the food without tasting it. And then what you did is you assessed your mouth and your jaw and anything else that you noticed. Then you took your baseline bite. And for a lot of us, that's just taking a big old chomp and swallowing it as fast as we can. But some of us are good about holding the food in our mouth. Then you took a bite and you tracked the path of the food in your mouth. If you're a right-sided chewer, left-sided chewer, you go back and forth. We talked about trying to control the path of the food in your mouth, to hold it in your mouth as long as you can. Then we took a bite and talked about the flavor and our taste buds, and how different foods can have multiple flavors if we just give it a chance and actually taste it. And then we talked about texture and how some of us have texture issues. A lot of us really like different textures. Some of us can't handle certain textures. And you know what? Whatever it is, it's fine. That's you, you're individual. But if you enjoy the texture, you want that to last for a while. So that's the key of that point. So for this very last bite, what you're going to do is practice everything we talked about. After we do our centering breath, I want you to look at the food, smell it, take a couple seconds to do that, and let this last bite be the longest bite that you've ever had of this food. And track the path, track the flavor, track the texture. So let's go ahead and do our centering breath. Okay, go ahead and take your last bite. Let this be the longest bite you've ever had in your life. cracks, we're gonna quit. I apologize, I should have offered you something so you could have done it. Sorry. And if I said to you guys, okay, now we're gonna quit, would you feel like you were ready to quit? Did you get enough satisfaction out of that, or because there's still some left, do you feel like, I gotta eat it up? It probably depends on the food too. How many of you all are one-sided chewers like me? Good. Go back and forth? Good. How many of you could notice the salty going into the starchy sweet? Did you know it?
I've never could get a full sweet, but I
Okay.
got to where the salt wasn't there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, good. Yeah, try sometime with a saltine at home because it's a little bit more evident there. Okay, very good, very good. You know, it's so funny because when I do this with groups, and if I say, okay, we're going to quit, I'll have people just piling the stuff in their mouth because they're afraid I'm going to take it or do something with it. You know, this is your little potato chip bag. You can do whatever you want with it. But have you ever taken, it was about 23 minutes, and we did 6 bites. Isn't it something? Why do we gulp? And a lot of us gulp because we came from a big family, and if you didn't gulp, then you didn't get any food. I always have military people tell me, Kathy, in the service, you gulp. It's just, or maybe you went to an elementary school that you couldn't go outside until you ate your whole lunch, so you gulped. I have a lot of, I do, a lot of health professionals, obviously, since I work for TriHealth, and if these medical professionals even have time to eat, they're going to scarf it, especially if they work in surgery and things like that, and with, of course, COVID and everything else going on. So, give me your reaction. Did you ever think you could take 23 minutes with 6 bites?
No, because I think it's, and I know for myself because I am like the stress eating, like when I used to, like I'm just like it's the comfort part, and so I think I eat more and more, and because it's a comfort, but then I'm eating it so fast, I think that's why I'm eating more. I'm not getting the satisfaction, the comfort from it as much. So it just, but I will say, like, if you would have told me to hand those back, I would have been like, oh, but I would have been okay with it. Because, I mean, you did, there was a satisfaction of,
you summarized.
Truly, like, I've never actually been walked through like that. Like, they always say you should chew your food more, you should slow down. But until you do it, it's totally different, I have to agree.
Yeah. And I know that, we really overdid it.
Right.
But then there's got to be some. I have to tell you one real quick story. I had one client that I did this with, and I had her bring in her favorite binge food, and it was those kind of custody-filled Long John donuts.
Like an eclair.
Kind of like an eclair, but more of like a donut variety, because the eclair's a little crunchier, and I like those better. But so what I would always do, and I do it one-on-one with people, is I do it with them so they don't feel ridiculous. And we sit back to back, and I go ahead and eat whatever they brought, unless I absolutely can't stand it. I just don't like raisins, but I like just about everything else. I think I had too many as a kid. So she brought that, we cut it in half, and we got to step 3, and she said to me, Kathy, I can't eat anymore. And I said, why? She says, I have never noticed that fat coating in my mouth from eating this. I've never noticed the, what did she call it, sandy icing. And that cream tastes so sweet and fake to me. So I felt really bad because I didn't want to turn her against her favorite binge food.
Right.
But she had never taken the time, as you say, she would just stuff it.
Yeah.
And she said, this is really something, Kathy. This just really, really helped me. So, and I kind of kid people, and it's not like, once we all can go out and eat all the time when we want with our friends and everything. You don't want to say, well, excuse me, let me get my paper out. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to, do a cleansing breath, centering breath, all that stuff. That's kind of overemphasizing it. But take a look around in the restaurants, and the people that are enjoying themselves are eating slowly. And, it's just, I want you to just think about that. And I want to invite you to maybe try this once or twice a week at home. Just really emphasize it. We'll go through the slide deck now, which kind of goes a little bit more into the science, but a lot of it's very commonsensical. But I just really wanted you to do it first, to experience it, because then you can relate as we talk about the different slides. And Brent, I have to go over here to advance it. Sorry.
Actually, I'd like you to stay right there. If you
Okay,
could.
cool. All right, great. So mindful eating, also called focused eating, either way is fine. And it's otherwise known, as we said, it's learning how to eat in a positive, deliberate, and controlled fashion, which is, and that sounds kind of common sense, but so often we are so stressed, or we beat ourselves for eating the things that we like. When people ask me, Kathy, what's the healthiest meal plan? Because I hate the word diet. The healthiest meal plan to me is eat what you like and watch the portions. But try to get those fruits and veggies in every day somehow. But whenever you deny yourself to eat a certain item, then you're going to obsess and then you're going to binge on it. And so if you just learn to eat things in adequate portions in a controlled, deliberate, positive fashion, early in my career, I worked with people with eating disorders, and that's a whole different psychological realm of nutrition education. And so oftentimes it's folks just don't enjoy eating because of the guilt or the purging or whatever they do. And it's like, let's try to put it back into it being enjoyable again. We talked about gulping meals. We talked about earlier in the intro about that no other nation on earth has as much gastrointestinal distress as the United States because of our gulping. And when we gulp, we get a lot of extra air, causes gas, causes all kinds of challenging digestive issues. So if we can just slow down and enjoy our food, that would be great just for our overall health too. And it can really truly change your perception of eating. So mindful eating includes being very aware, which you guys were, of your physical part. The emotional part, well, that was in your head, as you were progressing. But it also includes recognizing your non-hunger triggers for eating. Is it the time of day? Is it that you smell that Auntie Anne's pretzel at the mall, when we can all go shopping again and everything? Is it that stress? Is it that being sad, being happy? I mean, food is so emotional to all of us too. So it's recognizing your non-triggers, your non-hunger triggers. Physiologic hunger is all based on your blood sugar. And if your blood sugar is in that normal range, like 80 to 100, 80 to 120, that normal blood sugar range, that's going to your hypothalamus, which is in your brain, which is saying you are nourished. You have enough blood sugar to give you what you need right now, whether it's a workout, whether it's walking, whether it's working, whatever. But once our blood sugar goes below that, that's when the hypothalamus says, physiologic hunger, stomach growling, you're ready to eat, you start to feel faint, you might get a headache, you might become hypoglycemic, that kind of thing. But so much of the time, we are inundated with food all the time that we don't even recognize those non-hunger and those hunger cues too. And once you learn to do that, eating is a whole lot more pleasurable. It's also trying to learn to meet your needs, your other needs, in more efficient ways than eating. And a lot of us, it's through, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, physical activity, reading, praying, whatever works for you in terms of stress management. And it's trying to really focus on that food can be both enjoyable, but we want to nourish our bodies too. So don't look upon it as the enemy if you've had issues with eating in the past, but as a way to provide enjoyment and nourishing, and then giving us satiety. Food is classified into carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. You know that. You know that carbohydrates are broken into simple carbs and complex carbs. Simple carbs are like the sugary, white, kind of sweet things that get digested and absorbed almost immediately and give us a high blood sugar spike and then a plummet. Complex carbs are fruits, veggies, whole grains, and some dairy products. And those take a little bit longer to be digested and absorbed. Proteins, you know what those are, meat, chicken, turkey, fish, nuts, beans, those kinds of things. That would give you a little bit more satiety value. Simple carbs take about 1 to 2 hours to be digested and absorbed. Complex carbs, maybe 2 to 3. Proteins, about 3 to 4 hours. And fats take about 5 to 6 hours to be digested and absorbed. And so that, if you eat a mixed intake of all the different kinds of foods, that's going to keep your blood sugar a little bit more normalized too. And you'll be a lot more in tune to your physiologic versus your non-physiologic hunger. So, and what I love about this is using food as the fuel you've consumed to live a vibrant life. We all want to live vibrancy and live a vibrant life. And so it's having the combination of the good, healthy stuff and also things that give us pleasure too. It's a powerful tool for developing a healthier, happier relationship with food, obviously. So this eating cycle by Michelle May is just a really great reminder of why am I eating, when, what, how much, and where, and just being very, very aware of what's going on. Am I really hungry? Am I physiologically hungry? Is this something that's going to be pleasurable to eat? You know, I'll have people say, Kathy, do I have to put kale in my smoothie? It just tastes so bitter to me. I'm going, no. You could put spinach in there. You can put leafy greens in there. Or you can skip it and eat a salad and get your greens that way. Why do we put all these rules, these food rules on us? Because if you don't like it, that's not going to satisfy you and give you pleasure. So I never say you have to eat something that you don't like. I mean, you had to do that when you were a kid. Why would you do that when you're an adult? So, and then some people say, is it best to eat 3 meals a day, 6 times a day? I tell people it's whatever your blood sugar cycle says. Some people need to eat those 3 meals and those 2 or 3 snacks. Other people eat carbohydrate, protein, and fat with each meal. They can go and be fine. 3 meals a day. Some people are doing that time-defined eating. They're trying to limit their eating experiences to maybe just 10 hours a day. So 3 times a day is enough, so they can kind of do that fasting, that intermittent fasting. So there's all these ways that you can do what's best for you. There's no one stamp that works for everybody. So it really depends on you and your blood sugar. So mindful eating, many people who struggle with food react mindlessly to their triggers. And I used to teach a weight loss program that just talked about, stimulus, results, stimulus, response. And we were always trying to figure out what are the different stimuli that get you to overeat or get you to binge. What's going on in terms of the stimulus or stimuli. And once you can kind of track your behavior, and if it's, stress, is there something else you can do instead so that you're not going to reach and try to get that the uncontrolled eating? They're reacting over and over and again and feel very powerless over their eating habits, obviously. So mindfulness increases that awareness of these patterns without judging, and just says, oh, I'm always binging as soon as I get home from work. That means that my blood sugar is probably low. It means that psychologically I'm celebrating that I got through another day. I'm always binging when I've had a fight with somebody. I'm always binging when there's been a stressful situation at work. So it's when you're not in that situation, it's kind of going through the self-talk and trying to figure out what those stimuli are and figure out how can I more healthfully address that challenge versus just turn to food, which a lot of us do. So the steps are, other than the specific things that we did, is recognize whether you're really hungry before you begin eating. Do you feel physiologic hunger? Did you guys salivate a lot when you smelled your chip? Did your stomach grumble or growl? Okay. So that salivation is, people go, oh, I'm so embarrassed, my mouth is watering. No, that is a God-given response to anticipating food, and it's getting your mouth ready to receive that food item to help the digestion system start. So recognize, are you truly hungry? And you guys already know this. Don't wait till you're famished, because that's when you're going to shovel it in and you're not going to quit. And then you're going to feel so lousy afterwards. And then this is really interesting. Have you ever thought about how full do I want to be? You know, when we talk about the holidays and the time between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we call it, I always kid people and say it's holiday, not months, where you're just going to go and, you know, eat yourself crazy. And so, and we have to remember on Thanksgiving, there's going to be the day after Thanksgiving, and there will be food. So you don't have to completely stuff yourself just because, I mean, there'll be nice leftovers. And, you know, once you really decide that you're not going to stuff yourself anymore, how full do you want to be? You feel so much better because you feel a whole lot more in control emotionally and psychologically too. And then we've kind of brushed on this already. Choose food that you like. Things that will satisfy your body and your mind. And if that's having a chip every now and then, that's okay. And this is kind of interesting. And we Americans sometimes are not really good at this, but making it a special occasion, actually sitting at the table, set the table, have something kind of pleasant, some pleasant music in the background. I kind of go round and round with the eat without distractions. I have a lot of people that are single that I do nutrition coaching for, and they'll say, Kathy, if I just sit there like this, you know, and just stare at my food, I want to get it over with. So if I read the paper, if I, in the middle of my good book, if I, you know, you don't want to watch anything upsetting, and that's all that's on television these days, you know, just, I'm okay with that as long as you still slow down and you portion up, and what you eat is what you eat, and you just don't go, oh, what happened to that? I'm okay with that. You know, my mom is by herself, and she listens to the radio or reads the paper, and I want her to do that because that makes her eating pleasurable, so I'm okay with that. This would just be, they don't want you to shovel. Eat when you're sitting down. It's sometimes easier said than done in some of our professions, and actually appreciate the occasion, and we just talked about that, what they do in Europe. And we talked about the centering breath. We really emphasized that with the counting in and out. Did you notice your jaw softening a little bit and your shoulders? We're in a world where we're like this all the time, and you guys know that. And so if you're in traffic and you just got cut off, don't close your eyes, but do take a centering breath. And you will just feel that tension melt. Don't do it too often because you'll hyperventilate and then you'll pass out on the road, and that won't work very well. But the centering breath is it's like a mini massage, and it truly is reoxygenating everything. And it's also like Pavlov's dog, that experiment, you know, where they rang the bell and the dog would salivate. When you do a centering breath, that's a signal to yourself of self-care. And you're going to go, it's just not worth it getting that worked up about it. So if you can practice that kind of mindfulness habit, that really helps a whole lot too. And then we talked about, we smelled the potato chips. One client I did this with, they brought in like a cheaper brand of chips, and they said, oh my gosh, the oil in these chips tastes terrible, because I never noticed it before. You know, they had kind of gotten like peanut oil chips before, and that's what they really, really like. And so, but also smelling the food can help you with that anticipation, which is really fun too with focused eating. And this is interesting. Decide which looks the most appetizing and start eating that first, because that's going to make the whole experience positive. Savor, taste as you eat it. If you notice you're not enjoying something, choose something else. And if you really don't like it, if there's something in there like you got ordered at a restaurant and there's just some kind of herb or spice that just doesn't agree with you, don't eat it. That's okay. And then you heard about, you know, chew 20 times, and you've heard about pausing, and you also know about the 20-minute rule. It takes 20 minutes for the food to be digested, to get your blood sugar to rise, to turn off your hunger center and your hypothalamus, and those are all very, very legitimate. But if you just take your time, it's going to be 20 minutes. And then when you're done, push your plate aside. That sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's almost like a healthy habit again, to say, I'm done, even though I didn't eat it all. And some people kind of, you know, play with the habit of just leaving a little bit of everything on their plate. Others of us can't because of our childhood and the clean plate syndrome and all that. But there's just something really, you feel like you've mastered a good habit when you don't necessarily have to have a clean plate. But if you also portion the right portion sizes, it's okay to have that clean plate. And then notice how you feel when you're finished eating. So the tips are basically try to sit down before you sit, clear the clutter, set a place for yourself, use tableware and utensils, take a moment to adjust the lighting so it's comfortable, consider playing some soft music, we talked about that, and try to minimize multitasking. So in summary, it's not a diet, because we hate the word diet, because the word diet has the word die in it, and we just don't do that anymore. It's not about giving up anything. It's just all about the process. Once you've experienced the increased pleasure from mindful eating, you may be motivated to become more mindful in other activities too. So, did you have any questions for me about anything? Okay, thank you so much for humoring me and doing the whole thing. And I wish you just a bunch of healthy luck and blessings. And I will be back in April to do the Mind meal plan with you. Okay? So thank you so much.
Thank you.